Our next guest on Smarter San Diego TV is here for the very first time. Please welcome criminal defense attorney Melissa Bobrow.
Well done, well done. All right, good job. Here she is.
Hello.
Melissa Bobrow is here.
Very exciting.
Talk about guns today. Well, not technically guns, but gun laws, let's say. This is a hot topic. Every time there's a shooting or something, I see the same people on Facebook saying the exact same things, arguing with one another. I thought it would be a good idea to actually talk about stuff that was relevant, specifically relevant to the laws of guns, sort of the history of that. So anytime we're dealing with law, you know, there's like federal law, there's state law. The federal law trumps the state law, but sometimes, or whatever it is that's going on. With the federal law in this case, it's the Second Amendment that everyone refers to.
Pretty much.
Right?
That's the big federal law regarding guns, is the Second Amendment.
What does that really tell us? I mean, does it really give us the right to have guns on us at all times?
I think that's a really important question because I do talk about this with people. There are people who are just against guns, and that's just their finite position on it. Then there are people who are gun owners who say things like, I don't want them taking my guns, I have a Second Amendment right to pretty much do whatever with my gun. And the truth is somewhere really in between there. The Second Amendment was written at a time, of course, when guns were very different and they didn't have any automatic, weaponry, and you had the one pellet and you had to go back this and reload it. It allowed for the organized militia. That was really what it was for. That was the purpose of the Second Amendment. But there's been case law since then that actually has interpreted the Second Amendment, and I don't know if expanded it is the right word, but it certainly brought it into this generation or century. And in 2008, there was a Supreme Court case. It was out of the District of Columbia, DC versus Heller, and it said that we're going to include the Second Amendment to allow people to bear arms for the protection of themselves. Now, I think that a lot of people, based on that, start to misinterpret what that even means. And I think a lot of the debate actually centers on that argument in particular.
What do you think about the people and the data that supports the fact that where they've created concealed carry or open carry states, the crime rates have gone down a lot? Do you think that has any reality behind it?
I mean, first of all, when any study comes out, anytime there's a study or a survey, I always look at the actual study or survey. The data is wonderful and those numbers are great, but you can always take any study or survey and argue it for whatever your point is, really. So I try to look at, well, who conducted the survey? Who were they funded by? How many people were in this survey? Who was partaking in the survey? Was it just people who are supporting a certain position to start with, or was it a random sampling? So I'm always hesitant because correlation doesn't equal causation, and there's usually more than one factor present when you see an increase or a decrease in crime across the board. I know California does have a concealed carry license. We are a state that has that. I don't know if a lot of people know, especially after Trayvon Martin with Stand Your Ground. California is a Stand Your Ground state. We don't have a duty to retreat. So, California...
Explain that for a second.
Yeah.
Stand your ground. What does that mean?
So in the law, there's the idea of, let's break it down. It's me and you. We're in a bar, right? And we're talking, and things get heated, and you throw a punch at me. I am allowed to defend myself, but only with reasonable force. So I can't now bring out a knife and try and stab you, or I can't break a bottle over your head. But I would be allowed to punch you back because I'm allowed to meet your force.
So
with reasonable force.
You can call, basically, is what
and this is a very simplistic way of looking at it.
Sure.
This isn't, of course, there are more details, and if this were an actual case, we'd be getting into more of the nitty and gritty of it. But as an overall, the duty to retreat is, if you're in your home, do you have to first try to get back into your home or make yourself safe? Are there steps you have to take before you can match that force with deadly force or reasonable force? And we don't have the duty to retreat. We don't have something in California that says, hey, if you punch me in the face, I have to first see if I can maybe walk away from the situation, or I have to maybe retreat. I have a duty to retreat. We don't have that in California. We have something that says, I can punch you back in the face. I can't stab you, or I can't raise the level.
But if someone
of the
pulls
fight.
a gun or
now,
shoots
if someone
at me,
pulls a gun, right, and then we get into issues of, well, what if someone's in my home? Can I shoot them? And I think that concept is something that gun supporters love, right? That if someone's in my home, I have the right to protect my home. And it's something that people who are against guns, that argument flips them out, right? I mean, it really, what if your teenager's coming home at 2 in the morning and you shoot them by mistake? And the reality is you can't shoot someone to protect your property. So if someone comes into your home at any time of day uninvited and they're there to steal something, you don't get to shoot them.
Really?
Yeah, you can't just
So
shoot someone because they're in your home when they shouldn't be.
So someone comes into my house and they're rooting through the jewelry box.
Right.
But they're leaving me alone.
Right.
I can't shoot them.
You're not allowed to just shoot someone to protect your property. You can shoot someone to protect yourself. If you believe...
So I can point my gun at them and I can say, get out of my house. And then if they come at me and I feel endangered, I can shoot them.
Well, I would take the case. I would certainly take the case. But it has to, the question is what's reasonable force in that situation? And if you aren't in imminent meaning immediate danger. In other words, there's a guy coming at you and you really truly believe that he's going to kill you or seriously harm you unless you shoot him. You can't just shoot people just because they're doing something that you don't want them to be doing, even if it's illegal. It's not the vigilante, statute that I think a lot of gun supporters think it is. It's not this idea of someone's breaking the law in my home, now I can shoot them because they're in my home.
It's not Texas.
Right.
You don't get to shoot them as soon as they step on your
right.
property.
It's not like we've crossed this invisible boundary and now I can shoot them because I don't want them here. And look, they're taking my jewelry. Now I can definitely shoot them. No, it's if you are afraid that they're going to harm you or your family, or you're allowed to protect yourself or others, but you're not allowed to protect property with deadly force.
With deadly force.
And keep in mind, the deadly force has to also be justified. So if there's someone in your home, middle of the night, it's very scary, you're afraid, but they're going through your jewelry box, you're afraid, of course. You're afraid that's your grandmother's ring, you'll never get it back, but your life isn't in jeopardy, and your family's life isn't in jeopardy. So you can't just shoot somebody.
Wow, that's like the Buddha law.
That's
Rebecca,
Yeah.
did you know that?
I mean, I didn't know that, no. I thought if someone came into your house, it was fair game, but that definitely makes a lot more sense. It's
Wow.
fair.
Right. It's the idea that, of course, that doesn't mean someone gets to come into your house and take your jewelry. I mean, you're allowed to fight them off, but it's just the difference between deadly force and force.
Wow, this is huge. I don't think a lot of people know this, especially people who are gun owners. They think that you do have the green light when that situation happens. Wow.
And I think
really
that's what also
interesting.
makes a lot of people who aren't in favor of guns very nervous. The idea of, that concept of, what if your kid's coming home late at night, right? What if you have a teenager who snuck out and now you hear a noise and the first thing you do is you bring your gun down there because you think if there's someone here, I can shoot him. And, it's something that makes people nervous.
Makes sense. Now I have some obscure questions for you that I'm sure you'll have to answer obscurely as well.
All right, let's do it.
But I know you won't be obtuse with me. So let's say, because there's really tough laws about how you even transport guns or how you have them in your home in the state of California. You have to have them under lock and key. They can't be out. I was just curious, if someone has their guns stored improperly, does that immediately make them liable for anything that takes place? In other words, if I didn't have the little lock and key thing on my gun and my 15-year-old son grabs the gun to show his friends and shoots one of them in the head or something like that, am I now liable, even though my son probably could have figured out how to take the thing off anyway? Do you have to follow those laws so that you can remove that liability from yourself? Is that the idea?
If you're a gun owner and you're a responsible gun owner and we can trust you with having, it's a weapon, there's no other way to put it, it's a weapon, it's used to kill, we're trusting you that you're going to take proper precautions, that you're going to keep it locked away appropriately. Now if you have a teenager or just anyone else in the house, it could be an aiding and abetting theory. Do you know this person might want to get a hold of your gun? This kid's got a temper. I mean, I could see how a prosecutor could come up with charges and a way of charging a person with it. Are there defenses? Absolutely, but could charges be brought in the first place? Yes, you could potentially be held liable.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that there are certain states where, let's say your gun is stolen or missing for either your own fault or through someone else's fault. California doesn't have a duty to report. There are a lot of states that have a duty to report that within 48 hours. And it's 48 hours from either when you know it was missing or you should have known. In other words, you keep your gun locked in a safe and you check it about once a week, just make sure everything's cool with it. And you checked it or you failed to check it that week. It's like, oh, that might be held to the you should have known standard, even though you maybe didn't check it that week. It might be. But yeah, we don't have a duty to report that in California.
That's really interesting.
So it would be a misdemeanor in other states, but here we don't have that. But dovetailing into what you were asking before, should you report it?
Right.
Why not? Why wouldn't you? If your gun is lost or stolen or missing or anything.
So it turns up to be,
why wouldn't
a crime, and they find it and they trace it back to you, you're gonna have a lot of explaining to do.
Exactly. Now you're almost putting yourself in a position of saying, well, I hope nothing happens with my gun while I don't know where it is.
Right.
The first person that they're going to come to is the registered gun owner. Because they should. That should be where the investigation starts.
Hopefully you will have been in a place where the crime took place, where there were lots of people who saw you, but
right,
maybe you were at home alone watching movies. That's not going to be good. So
it's to help yourself. In a situation like that, you're not going to get in trouble with law enforcement for not reporting it stolen, especially if nothing comes of it. But why not report it? Why not take that extra step and just make sure you're out of it?
Makes tons of sense. Yeah. Melissa Bobrow, thank you so much for coming in today. Criminal defense attorney. Congratulations on the big insurance case, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Great stuff. All right, stick around for more Smarter San Diego TV, where we guarantee to make you smarter than everyone else, commercial free.